What's going on, everybody? We're back with Fifth Down Territory. Before we get into the show, got a quick ad read to do, then we can get right into it.
Thank you so much for listening to the StadiumRant original. If you like our content, you should subscribe to our free newsletter, which will include exclusive interviews, articles of the week, and discounts on StadiumRant merchandise. Visit StadiumRant.com to sign up for our newsletter today.
All right, we're into it. So, first day of camp, fellas. We're finally getting to it. We're rounding the corner, and NFL is back. So we can start. With you, Shane, with some Cowboys news, with the Zach Martin possible holdout and then the Travion Diggs extension.
Yeah, we'll start with Zach Martin, since that was what kind of came first. A bit of a surprise out of nowhere move, because all offseason people were talking about the next Cowboy to get paid. Names were mentioned like CeeDee Lamb, Trevon Diggs, Micah Parsons, who's going into his third season, so he'd be eligible at the end of next season. Tyler Biadasz, who came on really strong in the second half of last season, kind of cemented himself as the center. And Terrence Steele, the undrafted right tackle, who's really become one of the better right tackles, at the very least in the NFC. You know, Zach Martin was kind of an afterthought, and not even necessarily where you don't think about him, but just like you didn't think about him really like asking for his contract, because he's always been one of the highest paid guards. But if you look at his per year average, he is, I believe, either seventh or eighth of the among guards. I think fourth among actual right guards in terms of per year basis. I think right now, if I had to guess, like I don't know if he's going to get that Chris Lindstrom or Quentin Nelson $20 million a year type contract, especially after today's news. But I think he's looking for some security, potentially for the next 2 to 3 years. I think they see him as everyone should see him as a future Hall of Famer or Ring of Honor candidate. Really the centerpiece of that offensive line, definitely their best offensive line player. And I would have to assume that the deal is probably going to get done before the season starts. I didn't expect him to play much in the preseason anyway. And plus, these things never really come out unless there's an intent of an extension to be made. We see it all the time where players threaten to hold out, and either they cave or an extension is made right before the season starts. I think going along the same lines. Plus, with the amount of moves the Cowboys want to make, the Cowboys could actually gain some footing here if they were to give an extension, open up some money down the line so they could sign players like CeeDee Lamb next year or Tyler Biadasz or whoever. So it would only benefit them from signing him.
Yeah, they certainly have some money to spend over the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. And they just spent some money recently, so why don't you hit on the Diggs news as well?
You know, I had made the argument, and not a lot of people agree with me amongst Cowboys fans, that amongst the players, the Cowboys who were more immediate free agents, that was CeeDee Lamb, Trevon Diggs, Tyler Biadasz, and Terrence Steele, guys who would be free agents at the end of the season. Well, not CeeDee Lamb, they picked up his fifth-year option, but that same kind of concept. Who should be paid first? And I said that it should be Trevon Diggs, because cornerbacks are always the most influx position in football. If you pay for your cornerback, it means that you're paying a guy who's going to be your number one guy, but it also means you're paying a guy $15 million or more a year. Your guys, the Patriots, they had that same quandary a couple of years ago. They handed J.C. Jackson. Blake, your team had the same concept when it came to
Tre'Davious White.
Yeah, Tre'Davious White, yeah, exactly. And he's actually been one of the better cornerbacks in the league. Obviously, there's been some injury history here and there, but when he's on the field, he's one of the best cornerbacks in the league.
Yeah, and need him to get back this year.
Exactly. And the thing is that in today's NFL, where the passing game is king, either if you can't rush the passer, you need to be able to defend the pass. And Trevon Diggs in his first 3 seasons has more pass breakups in Cowboys history in terms of their first 3 seasons alone. He led the league in interceptions his second year. Last year, not a lot of people realize this, he allowed over 250 yards in coverage less when lined up in man-to-man than the previous season. Because that was the thing. Pro Football Focus put out in his second year that he allowed, I think, 900 yards in coverage, even though Pro Football Reference only credited him with 700 and change, which, that's still a lot, but that is a huge number in difference. Last year, he only gave up, I believe, 5 something or 6 something. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but he allowed less yards in coverage. He didn't have as many picks, but he was still very much a factor. And the problem is he has the same kind of Richard Sherman concept where you throw it his way, you run that risk of turning the ball over. I think teams are starting to recognize that. He's starting to play less bait coverage. And those that are watching that know what bait coverage is, I know, Tyler, I'm pretty sure you haven't watched A.C. Jackson, know what that is. You essentially, you give off from the receiver a little bit to give the implication that he might be open, but really you're just giving him away a little bit to force the quarterback to throw you away, knowing you can make a play on the ball. That's what bait coverage is. And
little hint, it doesn't work against Stephon Diggs. Does
Well,
not work. Well, at least when J.C. Jackson was trying to do it.
I wouldn't recommend bait coverage against receivers who, when they get to that third level, can't be caught. So him, Tyreek Hill, they fall in line with that same kind of concept.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend bait coverage against those kind of guys. I would if you're running like a stop and go or a slant or even like maybe a waggle or something like that. If they're going a straight seam and you're one-on-one, you do not want to give up ground, because if you do, that guy's already running full speed.
Yeah. Totally get you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was saying, yeah, I understand that for sure. You can finish your point.
Well, I was just saying that, I like the deal because it doesn't make him the highest paid cornerback in the league, but the cornerback position is kind of weird right now, where we have like this large group of cornerbacks, like this 5 to 10 names, whoever you want to put in there, who make up the top cornerbacks in the NFL. But the cornerback market is different than the receiver market, and where everyone's paid by tiers. In the cornerback market, it seems like players are paid in sort of like a group concept, where the top cornerbacks will make anywhere from $18 to $22 million a year, but it's really more their guaranteed money that's the same. Their yearly average is what's different. And what's cool about these contracts, and Blake, you know this firsthand, is that huge cap hit really doesn't take effect until about the third season of the deal, which can really help them long term if they want to get something done with C.D. Lamb, Michael Parsons, Dak Prescott, and so on.
Eventually, those chickens do have to come home to roost.
Sure.
And and it's interesting kind of to see what the Chiefs have done, like where they've been going with like younger cornerbacks. It's going to be interesting to see what they decide to do with the guys that they've been bringing in. They haven't been really giving out those second contracts to those guys. But I agree with what your original point, that the way the league has been league. And
I can't hear you, Blake. Got no audio.
Blake, we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
You should leave the stream and jump back in. So I got my dog's whining because he's in the crate. Blake's cutting in and out. We're having a good time here. But
I thought you'd appreciate this. I referenced this last week. I have the Super Bowl shirt from when the Patriots made it to Houston, if you want to see.
Yeah, sure.
Real quick. So top of it says, and you can read this right here. And the back reads, I'm gonna have to.
You might have to bend down a little bit.
I can't really see it.
Yeah, I can't really see it.
Bitch.
Oh, there we go. There we go. That was a nice era on our team. Unfortunately, we're 4 years removed, and Belichick's still doing the thing where he's talking like down to all the reporters. They're asking him simple questions. He's like, "Yeah, I'm not a doctor. I don't do physicals."
I'm excited.
It's like, no, you're the coach of a football team. We all know that. That's why we're asking you questions about the football players, and you're just being a dick as per usual. So that was what I watched this morning. But yeah, so we also got some other big news. You're talking about the quarterback market, and the quarterback market is just keeps growing. Justin Herbert signs a 5-year, $262.5 million deal. And I honestly love this for the Chargers because they have to get in before the next round of extensions. Like, this is where teams like the Ravens and
Bengals are next.
Bengals, yeah, like teams like that. But like when you wait and you allow the quarterback market to be set by other teams, especially in this quarterback market, you're just going to pay way more money. You're by not paying up now, like earlier, and doing what the Chargers would have done, like that could have been $300 to $400 million next year. Who knows with the way the salary cap's growing and the way that this quarterback market's growing. I actually saw a tweet earlier. Let me pull it up. It said, Tom Pelissero, in 2013, Aaron Rodgers was the NFL's highest paid player at $22 million per year. Just 10 years later, there are 18 quarterbacks making over 22 million, 12 making 40, and now 4 making 50 million plus a year. The cap's grown at 82%, 82.7% in that 10 years, and the quarterback market's grown even faster. I blame Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. Personally, I hold them responsible for this whole mess. And now I am also holding the Giants responsible for the Danny Dimes deal, because they are very similar type deals. Not that either one of those players is a bad player. They just shouldn't be the player. Like, Kirk Cousins was the highest paid quarterback for like 3 seasons. It's just like, what is this mess that we're living in here? And now, again, it's ridiculous how much money these teams have and how much is allocated to the quarterback. And that, I get why the running backs are mad. That's another good transition, because the running backs are pissed off. Saquon, he might be a little bit more happy. He got his deal done. It seems like it was over $2 million in incentives, but like, really, it's mostly a respect thing, I would imagine. The only thing I've had an issue with about Saquon this whole time is he does have an injury history. He has a history of not being able to perform at his duty, and then he's spent a bunch of time rehabbing. He's finally back, but that's still a major concern. I think the deal that they signed is a good deal for both parties. It's good faith for both of them. It's just, Le'Veon Bell held out, and he had 4 or 5 seasons of being one of the most elite players in the league, and he was out of the league the next year because he held out. Like, it's just not something. It's a strategy, but you can't play chicken that much in this league, especially when you don't have the same resume. You just don't. Not saying that one of them is a better player, but the resumes just aren't the same at the time. So he got his deal done. Good for the Giants. I think he's going to have a heck of a year. I think some of those volume numbers are going to come down with they got Darren Waller, so adding him and like 25 slot receivers is going to kind of take away from Saquon's passing down roll a little bit. And that's good for him, because he's going to have to work on his usage and, see how his body holds up. So, big contract day. For sure, Louis. For sure, Louis. Actually, it says Jeffrey, so I'm sorry. It's Jeffrey, even though your name's Louis. I don't know how that works, but. What else we got?
We got to talk about Blake's team. They lost one of their biggest weapons. 4 positional player, Naheem Hines, out for the season. He's a running back, a receiver on the backfield. I even saw him play a little bit on the line as a slot receiver, kick returner, and punt returner.
Slot, running back, punt returner, kick returner.
What's like the biggest loss of? I know how big of a weapon he is, but what's like the biggest area of loss for him y'all have this season? This close to the start.
I would say in the return game, you can ask Tyler what kind of returner he was. After the DeMar Hamlin game, he had 2 kickoff returns in the Patriots' mouth.
That game would have been pretty good if that didn't happen, but it did.
But those 2 plays won us the game. It was at the Patriots still breaking my heart, but yeah, and he only had 13 touches offensively after the trade, and that was really something that I was not proud of Ken Dorsey for, and it was his first year as an OC, but. You give up like a sixth round pick to go out and get this guy. Like, you got to get him involved, and that was something I was really looking forward to this coming year. And now it's just kind of taken away from us, and we've effectively lost that trade. It's a freak accident, and but that's just kind of how it is. So now the team has an interesting. They basically have 3 choices of what they can do. They can cut him due to a non-football related injury, and they save $2.56 million in cap space, which is pretty significant. Or they put him on the IR or all of his cap hit, or they could potentially agree to a new deal where he's on the veterans minimum. And then they can it's kind of still a show of good faith. He can still be in the building and work with the trainers and whatnot as needed. And then eventually maybe come back the following year. I really don't know. I think that Um, I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough one. Like either you want to have kind of like a human component to it, and I think that in that regard, that putting him on the veterans minimum and letting him stay in the building and get treatment would probably be the best show of good faith. But this is also a business, and he took a risk when he went on the jet ski. I was having a talk with my father about it. And my father had some stronger words than I do, but but yeah, big loss. This effectively guarantees Latavius Murray a roster spot for us. So I see it as James Cook is our 1A, Damian Harris is our 1B, and Latavius Murray is our 2. And we also brought in this new guy out of Appalachian State, former 3rd-round pick, Darrington Evans. I want to say his name was.
Yeah, he was drafted by the Titans a couple years ago.
Yeah, I was watching some of his highlights, and he looks like a pretty good runner. And then I think the other undrafted free agent we have is Jordan Mims. So realistically, those are camp bodies, and we'll probably keep 1 or 2 of them for our practice squad, unless they really shine in preseason and are able to beat out Latavius Murray.
I'm mentally prepared for it to be like week 12 and Latavius Murray is leading the team in like rushing like carries other than Josh
very
Allen.
well last year.
I'm not saying anything bad about Murray. It's just I'm like for me in fantasy purposes, I'd like either one of Cook or Harris to kind of take the role, but I know in my brain that we're just gonna see like a 4-game stretch of Latavius with like 17 carries, and like he'll be eating up those rushing touchdowns, and just he is a good back.
He's got a big body. Dude. He can move. He's like 6'3". You don't see that many running backs in the NFL with that kind of size that can move like that.
Latavius Murray just stays employed. He's been playing since 2012. Just think about that as a running back. He's done that.
33.
Exactly. He was at his best with the Raiders, but every time he goes to a team, whether it's the Saints or whoever it is, he always finds a role and is able to take advantage of it. He's usually a short yardage kind of guy between the guards type of runner, but even still, he's able to average between 4 and 5 yards a carry, get like 6 touchdowns, and he keeps getting employed that way. And that, unfortunately, since we were talking about the running backs, might be the new running back market where it's like you have to like play to your niche. You can't be an all-round running back because teams are going towards a 3 running back type of set. We have one guy who's going to be our first and second down guy, a receiving back, and then a short yardage back. Which niche is yours? And if you can do really well, you can get paid well enough with that. But I think gone are going to be the days, at least overall, not in selective areas, like a Bijan Robinson.
Yeah,
where you're going to have like that workhorse, that all-around running back. Because teams now want to keep their guys fresh, keep their guys healthy, especially the running back position, which takes probably the most punishment in terms of like just in terms of a skill position player. I think that's like what we're heading towards. The running back market's no longer going to be $15 million for an all-around player. They want 3 guys to make up that one position, but you can get paid well enough if you're really good at your niche. Latavius Murray is just kind of like the example for the power guys, the short yardage guys.
For sure. I mean, this kind of plays right into another thing. Jonathan Taylor was clearly frustrated on that running back call, and I don't believe he was at camp today. I believe there's something kind of maybe brewing there. And again, it's a similar thing. It's like, JT, I know that you're amazing. Like, I know that you're an extremely talented running back, and everybody else knows. But you've really only had one healthy season. It's been one healthy, good season. Like, how are you expecting, to effectively hold out, especially when every team is running into a niche system? They have Anthony Richardson now. I have him like accounting for about 26 to 27% of that team's rushing share. So I'm like right then and there, you're taking away a quarter of the rushing share that JT would typically get. Yeah, there's no second back really that's extremely reliable. They drafted Evan Hull, good player. I'm not sure if he can hold up to a full workload, but
Zach Moss, former
Zach Moss is also there. I mean, he's a plotter, so I'm not too worried about Zach Moss. But he's gonna take targets, carries and targets again away from JT. I think Anthony Richardson also is going to score touchdowns on the goal line. And when JT had his big season, that was another thing that he did really well. He scored within the 5-yard line. He was really, really good within the red zone there, within like near the goal line. I think that it's just like it's tough when you only have 1 year of production to sit there and hold out. I get frustration, and I get issues like that, but you really like some of these running backs really have to look at their body of work and see what's like. If I worked for 3 months well at a company and I was like, yeah, I deserve to be the highest paid player or person at this company now. It's like, yeah, it's a great 3 months, but this guy's been doing it for 4 years. What's like he should definitely like.
The balls played feet, lads.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. Feet usually helps. It's in the name, football.
Yeah, you definitely need feet to play football. Serves you right for Muscat. But thank you for your comment. We very much appreciate it.
You know why football is called football?
Why?
Because the game begins.
Oh my God! I'm pretty sure you cut out right before you said that. You finished your thing.
I know, correct?
Because the game begins with a kickoff.
Oh, okay. Because I was on
Great cliffhanger.
Yeah. It was perfect timing for that. I don't know how you cut
out. Who did Negan kill?
Damn. Did you watch the Dead City? It's pretty good.
I hadn't seen Dead City. I was never even really that big of a Walking Dead fan. I watched a lot of the episodes, but like I knew people who were like super into the show. I enjoyed a lot of it. I was much more at that time a bigger Breaking Bad fan. That was a show that I really liked.
Excellent show.
Yeah,
excellent show.
Love that.
He's
show.
The one who knocks. So we have a couple of people on the defensive side knocking for holdouts here as well. And these players, like Chris Jones, he wants to be the second highest paid player at his position. I'm pretty sure Aaron Donald's making around $30 million, like right near there. So I'm assuming he wants to be in that ballpark. I don't see how Kansas City pulls that off, like to pay him $30 million. I understand they don't have a bunch of other players around making a ton of money, but $30 million for a D end or a D tackle is pretty expensive. I'm not sure if they're going to get there, and he seems pretty adamant that he wants a above market value deal. So I'd put that one at like a 6 to 7 that he does actually miss some time here. What do you guys think?
Well, if you don't mind, Blake, I'm looking actually at the defensive tackle market right in front of me on Over the Cap, and I like them a lot because they show like good cap breakdowns. Like I use Spotrac for market evaluations because they do good market evaluations. And I'm looking at just the top 5 defensive tackles. Right, let me just give you the names: Dexter Lawrence, Deron Payne, Jeffrey Simmons, Quentin Williams, Aaron Donald. That's 5 through 1, right? And there are players who I think are better who are making less. Like DeForest Buckner is down there about 4 spaces below. Vita Vea down even lower. Chris Jones is actually just below DeForest Buckner. And I think defensive line is one of those positions where there's no real, and I might be wrong, there's no real market in terms of like how you value the positions. To me, defensive tackle is kind of like inside linebacker, where they get paid according to sort of a market average versus their value on the team. If your team runs a lot more 2 inside linebacker schemes, but he's like one of the leading tacklers, he's gonna have more value to your team. If your team runs a lot more 3 linebacker concepts, like Lamb, I know your defense runs a lot of 3 and 4 linebacker concepts, so y'all do a lot of versatility. And they wouldn't have as much value because depth is more important.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at Chris Jones, who you could argue last year for a stretch was the best defensive player in football.
He makes Super Bowl winning plays. That's what he does.
He does. He really does. He's on his way to the Hall of Fame. He's going to be a Hall of Fame defensive lineman. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a game wrecker. Absolutely. This is true.
But
When you need a play, when your defensive line needs a play, he always seems to be there.
yeah,
So,
except he's 29. That's the thing is defensive lineman. The position can also devalue not as much as running backs, even though they get hit on every single play, but they can devalue. And he's gonna be an unrestricted free agent. And you have my dog in the background. That he's gonna be an unrestricted free agent in 2024. So I think he's trying to get that contract out of the way now before the market shifts once again. We just saw last year Jeffrey Simmons, deservedly so, get his extension. He at the time became the second highest defensive tackle. Quinton Williams, I think last week actually, became the next highest defensive tackle in the NFL. Deron Payne got paid this offseason. And so we're seeing the defensive tackle market, just looking at it. It's kind of all over the place. Like, I'll give you an example, right? So, Blake, your Buffalo Bills, they have a guy by the name of Ed Oliver. I think is incredibly underrated. I think he's very valuable to the defensive line. He right now
they just re-signed him.
Exactly, but you know where he ranks among interior defensive linemen?
Not like in the middle of the pack.
16th, on a per year average, 16th. But I would argue that Ed Oliver is a top 10 defensive tackle. He definitely was the last 2 years at the very least.
We're hoping his best years are ahead of him. He really showed out on Thanksgiving. He was one of the main reasons we won that game against the Lions. That was when Von Miller went out. But outside of that, our defensive line was really kind of lacking the second half of last season. So hopefully
he's more of a speed rusher. He uses more speed than power. Correct? He's more slim bodied, right?
But hopefully having Leonard Floyd and a healthy Von Miller will take some pressure off of him, and our defensive line can be a real problem this year.
But the point is, what I was trying to get to was that, even though I'd argue as a top 10 defensive tackle, is that he's paid beyond that. He's paid well below the market, and that's the market for defensive linemen. If Chris Jones right now it looks like he is 10th on the defensive tackle market. He turns 30 this upcoming season. He just got off one of his best seasons of his career. If we can assume there's no immediate turnaround, because defensive linemen are kind of all over the place. You don't know when the actual default's going to happen. Some defensive linemen play well in their mid-30s. Would you spend that kind of money, even though he has one more year under his contract? The Chiefs are right now not necessarily in cap hell, but they're approaching it. Kind of like Blake's Bills. They're not in cap hell, but they're approaching it. He's so valuable to that defense. He's their best defensive player. I don't think anyone can argue he is their best defensive player. He's one of the best defensive players in football. But can you afford to spend that kind of money on an interior defensive tackle, especially when you have other positions that are also coming up to need contracts? And with your back against the cap wall, can you afford that?
Better to be in cap hell than quarterback purgatory.
Oof, that's a good. That's a shirt. That's a shirt.
I'm in quarterback purgatory, so it feels pretty bad. I can't even say it.
I lived my whole childhood in quarterback purgatory, and I will sleep just fine with Josh Allen's contract, which is currently number 9 in the NFL, soon to be number 10 when Joe Burrow signs his contract.
I'm glad you can count that high.
I was a math major.
I know. We have a nice comment here that kind of segues into the next player. So Bose is about to completely change the D line market, and I think this one's like a 3 in a holdout scale. I think he isn't there yet, and Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch both said he's not going to be practicing or playing without a new deal. So when your general manager and your coach kind of agree that you're not going to be playing without a new deal, you're probably going to get a new deal. It's just a matter of the 49ers working the salary cap. And they're really good at that, I will say, over there, working the salary and kind of making money work for their players. So I do expect him to get probably around $30 million a year. That's where the market, that's where the edge market is now.
It's getting there.
It's what's called quarterback, wide receiver. They're both kind of getting there. Quarterback's obviously there, but wide receiver, edge rusher, left tackle, Those are all like cornerback, I don't think cornerback's up there
The premier positions are the ones that have like that have like an established market, like you're saying, and where like the top guys get paid. This quarterback's the only one where it's like, okay, who's next? You're going to become the highest paid player. Just because you're a receiver or a cornerback, you might not necessarily become the highest paid player. But yeah, edge rushers in that same group.
For sure.
Then you got safeties, you got guards, you got running backs.
The safety market is weird just because like the best safeties can sometimes make 15 mil and the next best safeties can make like 7. That market's weird.
It depends if they're phrased as like a safety or a DB, because a lot scheme really, really dictates those prices in those markets. Right. Again, like you were saying about Trayvon Diggs, like I think the Pats have one of the better safety groups in the league, and they're not paying really any of them. Kyle Duggar's probably going to get paid pretty well. Maybe he's probably good. He's probably like a $12 million a year player. Honestly.
Well, because Kyle Duggar's this new kind of safety who plays linebacker and box safety. He doesn't just play one.
He also scores touchdowns. Like he has a nose for the end zone. Like it does. Mm-hmm. Like he's scored a few times. So yeah, when they picked him out, Lenore Ryan, I was like, Lenore Ryan, what is this? But he's a good player, and he deserves to get paid. Probably won't pay him, knowing the Patriots.
Once again, shout out Over the Cap. Love their website. I'm looking at the top 3 edge rushers. Y'all can like guess. Who do you think the top 3 edge rushers are right now in the NFL?
By contract?
Miller.
By contract.
Von Miller's up there. Yeah, I believe Von Miller's up there. I would say Joey Bosa and Myles Garrett as well.
So you're saying Joey Bosa, Myles Garrett, and Von Miller?
Correct. Yeah, those are my 3.
Oh, you forgot the highest paid edge rusher, T.J. Watt. Come on, man. T.J. Watt's averaging just over $28 million a year. Joey Bosa is still under that extension they gave him a couple years ago, $27 million a year, and then Myles Garrett is averaging at $25 million a year. It looks like Von Miller's contract was structured out to where he's averaging $20 a year, but his base salary is only going to be about $10 this year. But like that's how they spread it out.
Yeah,
Nick Bosa though I think is going to be, like you said, that first $30 million type of an edge rusher, which also tells me as a Cowboys fan what that means for Michael Parsons and what it means for like the next crop of edge rushers, because you talked about the safety position where like you don't just play safety, you play multiple things. Micah Parsons doesn't just play edge rusher. He plays inside.
He's like the Shohei Ohtani of defense. He does everything.
Yes,
he can play. That's who Micah Parsons is.
I'm gonna steal that.
Like, go for it. It's
I'm gonna steal
that. He is like the ultimate utility player, and he might be the best defensive player in the league. Like he very well is maybe the closest thing that we've had to like a Lawrence Taylor type of player. So he's a problem. He's a straight up problem.
But that's the thing about Nick Bosa too, is he's holding out, but everyone knows his deal is going to get done. And while the 49ers are in this weird area where they just keep lucking out at the quarterback position, they always seem to get guys who are good enough to get them deep into the playoffs. They got Mr. Irrelevant to become very relevant. He's going to be making almost nothing this year. We'll see what happens with Trey Lance, but I'm willing to bet he'll have a decent trade market. Someone's going to pick him up. And then that means Nick Bosa will pretty much be like have no problem getting his extension. But I think he knows coming off without a doubt his best season. He led the NFL in pressures and pressure rate, and that's become a thing, especially as we go into a more analytical NFL. We're starting to realize that sacks are cool, but pressures and pressure rate are more important because it shows the frequency in which the guys get into the quarterback. Yeah, this guy might bring him down, but who's the guy who's putting him on his back more often? Who's putting him off key more often? And Bosa did that better than anybody last year.
I would agree. He's got everything. I mean, that family is just made in the lab.
Yeah, he went to St. Thomas Aquinas down in South Florida. Both
big noses too.
Yep. It doesn't matter. They're rich. They can fix that.
Oh, I know.
Probably should wait till after their football career is over to do any sort of work.
That family's probably all jerks, but you can tell
they are. Yeah, no, I one of my friends from college was actually friends with Nicky. They call him in high school, and they went to like Ultra Music Festival down there, and yeah, those guys have a good time. I'll just leave it at that.
Now we get to our last kind of defensive holdout here that I saw. Cam Jordan, which is kind of a surprise to me, but he said to Josina Anderson that he was trying to play another 3 or 4 years. So he's looking for, not a 1-year extension. He's played with the Saints his whole career.
Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame, absolutely. That dude, as consistent as they come. And honestly, there's a lot about his game that kind of still translates, and it was never based on speed or brutal strength. He has both of those things, but he's just one of the best technicians on a defensive line in the game, and that holds up well into their 30s typically when you play like he does. He hasn't really been injured all that much. So if Sean Payton were there, I'd put this at like a 3 or 4. But with the different, if you've been watching the show, I'm not as high on the Saints as other people are this year. I don't believe in the Dennis Allen magic. And the fact that he's talking a holdout, tells me that he might not believe it either. Because I feel like the Saints are typically a really well-run organization, and you don't really hear a lot of holdout news from them. So this is at like a 6 for me. What do you guys think? Blake, you want to hit that?
I'm talking. Oh, what do I think about Cam Jordan pulling out? Sorry,
Yeah.
I thought I was waiting for Shane.
You're good.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all of the things you said. Guys got to get it. Guys got to get his money while he can. We were just talking about like the market is going to be changing here. I'm not too worried about it, but I guess the longer it drags on, I guess the more that'll change, because he's like a really big locker room guy for them, and like one of the cornerstones of that defense and what they're doing there. But I don't expect him to get traded or anything like that. I would expect this to get done by camp. And I still got $10 on that Saints Patriots game with you. Don't forget about it.
I won't forget about that. I always pay my debts, and you know this. I've owed you some money before. I've always paid it.
Always.
That 10-win season that I thought was coming with Cam Newton, I gave you that $50.
Cam Newton.
Hey man, I was living off the Brady juice still. That shit's all gone. I dripped the last thing out to you, or when he named Matt Patricia our play caller last year. That's when I used the rest of it, and it's gone now. So yeah, we have, what else do I have here? Did we talk about Kadarius Toney? He tweaked his knee the other day. Typical Kadarius Toney. Andy Reid said that he needed surgery to clean up. Dude, I love Kadarius Toney. I have him on so many teams, and every time it seems like he's going to be fine, there he is getting the tweak on his knee. Now he needed surgery to clean it up.
Yeah, but you don't blame a guy because he keeps getting hurt. You make it seem like, oh, what a scrub. He's
not a scrub.
His knees full like Japanese paper.
I don't know if he has any cartilage in his knee anymore. Like, that shit's probably bone on bone. Like, I love the talent. I love the landing spot. I thought he was going to take over Juju's role, and just he's a beast with the ball in his hand too. Small dude, but a lot of power.
It's like buying a used car. Like, like if you have like a new axle in it, like how much like eventually the car is just not what it once was. I don't know. We'll see. He's in a good situation. They got everyone's focused on Travis Kelce. He's got Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball. If he can stay healthy, then he has an opportunity to really do something. But this is just kind of been his MO, like where he's in for like 3 or 4 weeks, out for 2 weeks, and like he never really gets to get into like a rhythm because of that. Maybe that'll change. But that was Sammy Watkins' issue in Buffalo, and then Sammy Watkins was complaining about not getting enough targets, and a lot of Bills Mafia was like, listen, dude, you got to stay on the field and like to build that chemistry.
He needs an oil change.
Oil change. We'll see.
I actually don't.
That's funny.
I actually kind of like the Chiefs' depth at wide receiver. There's no alpha there, but because they have Patrick Mahomes throwing them the ball, you can pretty much put like anybody out there. You probably make them look good.
Well,
Kelsey's
going to dominate too.
Well, Kelsey is wide receiver one. He's a tight end, but he's wide receiver one. Pat Mahomes throwing to nobodies with Travis Kelsey out there was like when Tom Brady was throwing to Kimbrel Tompkins when Gronk was clearly number one. Okay. It didn't matter who your receivers were, but the Chiefs actually have what I would call like undiscovered talent. They have people like Justin Ross and Rashee Rice who haven't really had a chance to shine yet, who have much of a pretty decent upside. Yeah, look at someone like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who right now I think is wide receiver one, a pretty solid slot receiver coming in, filling in for Juju Smith-Schuster. Sky Moore coming into his second season, he's going to be their deep threat. We'll see how he looks. I think if they try and put him as an X, it ain't going to work. As a Z, run those underneath, those slants, and even those cross patterns. I think his speed really helped that. But yeah, Kadarius Toney, just because of upside, that hurts a lot. Because anytime you have a first round pick, and that's kind of the thing, when you have a draft position of a certain player, that stigma sticks with them. It's like he's a first round player, he should be a star, which is why it's hard for people to really grasp when a fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh round player outperforms a certain player. The reality is like we all know Trey Lance is a first round pick, but right now you can't really say he's better than Brock Purdy because Brock Purdy's proven to be better. But the thing is, he has the stigma of being a seventh round pick attached to him. Kadarius Toney is a first round receiver. He was the third receiver drafted in that draft class behind fourth behind Jamar, Jalen Waddle, and Devontae Smith. That's because the Cowboys and the Giants traded with each other. I remember that. But right now their best receiver is Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who was undrafted and was a free agent signing from the Packers. He's their best receiver, and at some point potential goes away, and you are who you are, and then you become an if they can kind of player. And an if they can kind of player is whenever you see someone in the media or someone write about if they can get back to their 2018 form, if he can stay healthy, if he can avoid doing everything he's done for the last 4 seasons. Well, yeah, ifs and buts for Kenny, that's we'd all be Merry Christmas. But at some point, you are who you are. And up to this point, Kadarius Toney has been untapped potential. Kadarius Toney is Brandon Roy with pads on, okay? He has all the talent in the world, but he can't stay on the field, which sucks because I'm actually a decent Kadarius Toney fan. And I still believe, like I said earlier, I don't want to blame the guy for getting hurt, but he does keep getting hurt. And
I'm with you, man, on liking Toney. I've liked Toney since he was drafted. My buddy actually, Corcoran, he commented earlier. He is on the not like Kadarius Toney bandwagon, and he is vehemently against like the player. He just I don't know, like he nothing against him, but he, how it is. You just kind of fall in the sand with a player, and like that's where he is, and I'm on the other side. So like it hurts me to say that. Like I thought he was gonna have like the cream rises to the crop, and like people demand targets. When he's on the field, he demands targets. So
at some point though, the cream goes bad.
You're true. This is true. Some point the cream just may not have it. So we'll see on that. I think I have one more bit of news here. No, we did all the news, so we can get into the dissecting divisions. We're gonna go to the NFC East. And we'll start with Shane and his Cowboys.
No. So, I want to say the Cowboys for last.
Oh, okay, sure. Let's be
fair. Let's be fair. Yeah, let's start with the Giants. They're the team.
The Giants.
The Giants to me have been like the most talked about team in the NFC East because they've done the most this offseason. Okay, obviously the Cowboys get all the talking points. You can ask any Cowboys fan. We're kind of sick of everybody talking about the Cowboys, good or bad, because it makes everyone hate the Cowboys by default. That's kind of what it is. You talk about something. If you eat nothing but chicken for every day for a month, you're gonna be sick of chicken.
You want to know the real reason why I don't like the Cowboys? Like the real reason? Because they're labeled as America's team. I'm sorry, brother.
Oh, that's fair enough.
You got to win. You're gonna win this in this
I
millennium.
feel like we lost that label. I was okay keeping that label in the 2000s, the first decade of 2000s, still because we were like carrying that over.
Yep.
But like, I'll be honest, those 4 years after Aikman retired and before we got Tony Romo, really put a bad taste in my mouth. And then Tony Romo, I love Tony Romo to death. They wasted him. They kept Jason Garrett way too long.
I hate Jason Garrett.
I don't
Not
want
a
to
fan of his.
We're talking about the Giants.
Yeah. So all right, let's do the we got record predictions, most polarizing player, one hot take, and best game on the schedule. So you can start with the Giants. We'll go down to Blake, up to me, then recycle back through.
I'm gonna do the schedule and the record prediction first because I have the schedule pulled up. So I'm not gonna pick any Cowboys games for the East teams just because like I'm gonna watch all my Cowboys games. That's just who I am. I'm gonna look at the team, but I want to look at a team that's gonna like really show the Giants for who they are. Because last year I thought the Giants were lucky to get into the playoffs, and they played a team in Minnesota which was lucky to win the NFC North. The NFC honestly is down bad. All the best quarterbacks in the NFL are over in the AFC. The NFC is a defensive conference right now. It's a defensive conference. That's what it is right now. And you have a handful of good quarterbacks. You can go like who you think actually is considered a good quarterback in the NFC, but that's subjective. With the Giants, though, I'm looking at their schedule. They start with my Cowboys. They go to Arizona. They go to San Francisco. They play Seattle. They go to Miami. They go to Buffalo.
It's rough in the beginning.
It's rough for them.
It's a tough schedule.
And I respect Brian Dable. I'm saying this again. I don't respect dime store Josh Allen, which is what I call Daniel Jones. I think they want him to be. They want him to be that. He's more of a Jacoby Brissett, but with less power under his arm. Well, I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm actually interested to see how they do when they go to Miami because they'll play the Cowboys, they'll play Arizona, they'll play San Francisco, they'll play Seattle. They played a whole bunch of playoff teams, but then they go kind of out of their element. They go down to Miami. Another team who a lot of people think could be maybe the New York Giants of the AFC, a team who barely got into the playoffs, who has a lot of talent, who has a talented coaching staff, but the quarterback is always going to be the question. That's what Tua is. I think Tua is better than Daniel Jones, but that's just me. I think that's going to be the game that really shows like if the Giants actually are going to be a playoff team or not. If they lose that game, I'm looking at the rest of their schedule. It's just as brutal as the start. Really, their easiest game, and easy is kind of subjective to like what you think about them. Their easiest game right now is the Raiders. They got to go to Vegas to play them. And
I think it's Arizona.
Well, I'm talking about after Miami.
After that, okay.
After Miami.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, because like the first part of the season, it really is brutal. But like when they go to Miami, then they go to Buffalo, then they play Washington. Washington, I think, will actually be better than them this year. The Raiders right now, after the Miami game, look like their easiest opponent, but the Raiders always seem to play teams hard. So, I'm not. I ain't
what do you
buying the
think
Giants
for the
side.
prediction?
I'll be honest with you. I look at their schedule, and I only see like maybe 5 teams they can beat. I'm trying to be objective here because like I understand as a Cowboys fan and all that, but I don't see them being better or at least as good than like 5 teams, and that's it.
So what? You
5 and 12.
5 and 12. Okay,
I'll say 5 and 12. The most polarizing player for me is the quarterback. Is Daniel Jones. I don't have the same kind of respect. I understand why they paid him, but I think Saquon Barkley really is the quote unquote quarterback of that offense. He's their most important piece, and you're putting all your eggs in a basket of a quarterback who last year had his best statistical season, and it really was just kind of a meh season from Daniel Jones. He threw for 3,205 yards. He did complete 67% of his passes. I'll give him credit. He averaged under 7 yards a completion though, and he only averaged just over 5 yards per attempt. Okay, so he was very much throwing the shorter routes for completion. 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. It was kind of like a glorified rookie season. Okay, if he can, I hate to use that word, if he can build off that under Brian Dable's system, I might be able to take him more seriously. But I never did take him seriously coming out of Duke, and so until he proves me otherwise, he to me is just. He's Kirk Cousins, but who can run and less consistent.
Word. So your hot take, I think, is your schedule prediction or your record prediction, like 5 and 12. That's a lot. All All right, Bahookie, rip up the Giants.
Yeah, I had a very similar thought process to Shane. Honestly, I was looking at the schedule and I saw that Miami game on there. I decided to go with the Seattle that they play like a week before. It's on October 2nd on Monday Night Football. Game is at home, and two wild card teams last year, and the beginning part of the schedule is absolutely brutal for the Giants, and they might be like a 2-win team going into like the mid season stretch, and they're gonna have to beat some teams that people aren't expecting, and like if they go through and lose that Seattle game, lose that Miami game, lose that Buffalo game, like they're gonna be sellers at the trade deadline. Yeah, Daniel Jones was a good pick. I wanted to try and stay away from that one because I felt like he signed his contract, like whether
Low
he's
hanging fruit.
whether he's polarizing or not, he's there to stay, and I don't know who's gonna trade for him. Like I mean, you're going to be trading like a 7th-round pick or something. Maybe something better than that if someone's hurt. I don't know. But my most polarizing player that I decided to go with was Daniel Bellinger, due to Darren Waller coming in. Daniel Bellinger, guy have looking to hopefully take a step forward. It takes a couple years for tight ends, but now that Darren Waller's in there, it's probably going to eat into his targets. Maybe this allows them to run 12 personnel more effectively. That's what I know. That's what the Bills are trying to do with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. And but I'm just kind of not. I'm not exactly sure what type of role to expect out of him. And I'm hoping he takes a step forward. I did not go quite as low as you on the win total of 5. I decided to go with 7 and 10. But none. It's more or less the same. 5 and 12 is probably better realistically because you're going to be getting a better draft pick. And but yeah, 4th in the division, and the Dable hype train slows down quite a bit because yeah, they won a lot of really close, inexplicable games last year, and that's usually not sustainable, as we kind of like saw like the Vikings last year. I think that both the Vikings and the Giants won a lot of like those really close games, and they're probably not going to go their way. I think I had the Vikings going 7 and 10 as well when we did them. Up to you, Lamb.
Yeah, so I'm a little higher on the Giants than you guys. I mean, I think they're going to be an 8 and 9, 9 and 8 type of team. I do think I think that Dayball and that defense steals them a couple games like it did last year. I don't think as many games, but I mean, look at the schedule. I think they'll beat Arizona. I think they'll beat Washington. Who knows with the Jets by week 8? That could be a shit show, or they could be 8-0. So I'm going to go with the shit show side for now to make myself feel comfortable. I think they win that Jets game. The Raiders game, I think they can win. They'll probably beat us because, that will piss me off. So, like, I just see a couple more games they can eke out. My most polarizing player is going to be Darren Waller. They brought him in for a reason. They don't have a number 1 wide receiver. They desperately need another number 1 target that will help in the middle of the field. Darren Waller is really good in the middle of the field. Last year, I'm pretty sure his yards per catch was around 13. If he can stay healthy, Darren Waller's one of those guys. Now that you said that, I'm just gonna every time I say it, I'm thinking of you. So good job.
You know what it is. It's an easy thing to go to.
No,
Mr. Washington.
Yeah, so that's pretty much where I'm at. I do think Darren Waller is like he reclaims that top 3 tight end status if he's out there every game. I think he's their target hog and makes the offense quite a lot better. So Washington for me, again, they're like Washington and the Giants are just gonna rock fight with each other all year. It's gonna be an 8-9 team, 9-8. I like Sam Howell a lot, but my most polarizing player is going to be Jahan Dotson. I think he is going to take an elite step forward, and possibly outshine Terry McLaurin, who's a really, really good wide receiver. I just think Dotson has an extremely good sense of where he is on the field. He's a smaller type guy, but that doesn't stop him from being one of the better contested catch guys last year. I don't have his numbers up right now, but he excelled at going up and taking the ball away from people. Like, he's got speed, size, like he does everything he needs to kind of do, and he has a nose for the end zone. He missed some games last year, but it seemed like every time he played, he was finding the end zone. So I think with a full 17 game schedule, I like Sam Howell. I like Eric Bieniemy. I think there's all pluses going on over here, so I think they take a small step forward and they look good. It's a good looking 9-8 for the Commanders, I would say. My one hot take is that Antonio Gibson finally like takes that like passing down role, because he was a wide receiver in college and all they've said since they drafted him was CMC this, CMC that, never used him like that. I don't think he's CMC, but I do think that since JD McKissic's gone, that the backfield is going to allow him to be more of that passing down back, and I do think he's very good at that. So I think that he has a nice season this year. Is my hot take. Antonio Gibson bounces back as like an RB2. Quick, easy, to the point. And then my best game for the Commanders is going to be I am going to say the kind of tough, actually. I don't see anything like really like that sticks out. I'm gonna go with San Fran, week 17. Because I do think Washington's going to be, because the NFC is kind of simple. Like I think anybody can kind of get into those 3 wild card spots right there. So I think it's gonna be a really important game for them. I think that it's kind of a good test your metal game if they are at this point. Let's say they're 8-7. There's 2 games left. They could really test their metal. I think it's going to be a good performance. There's a lot of kind of stars on the field as well with the defense that the Commanders have, with in the offense of both offenses, both pass rushers, Chase Young, Nick Bosa, Debo, Terry McLaurin, all those types of guys. So I think that's going to be a fun game to watch. Bahookie, you want to hit the Commanders?
Yeah, I was right in the same ballpark as you on them, honestly. I said 8-9. Yeah, 9-8 probably will get you into the playoffs. I saw them as a team that will improve and surprise some people. The beginning part of their schedule is actually kind of favorable. They have a couple tough divisional games in there, but I feel like they're a team who's gonna like, they're kind of like what the Dolphins were last year, and get out to like a hot start and get the team like starting to believe in themselves, and maybe they rattle off a couple games that people aren't expecting, but I don't think they're going to maintain that form all the way through. Once they get to that midseason point and they like now have expectations to start beating teams, they're not going to be able to beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. That's kind of how I see their season going. So with that being said, my game on the schedule to watch, I like the game against at Atlanta on October 15th. That one, just like those are, I feel like Shane wasn't quite as high on Atlanta as we were, but I think Atlanta is one of those good young upstart teams. I think that there's something about that. Watch it, like those are 2 teams that I feel like are gonna rise this year, and it's gonna be just a slugfest down to the end. And then if they're able to win that one, which I'm gonna give them a slight edge. I'm gonna to support my narrative here. For my hot take, the Commanders are going to come up with a huge upset win over the Eagles this year. which they did last year with Heineke. And that game, and I don't know, I'm kind of giving away my picks to the next ones here, but I've been pretty clear with where how I expect the NFC East to go. The loss from the Eagles against the Commanders is going to be ultimately what costs the Eagles the division, because I see the Cowboys and the Eagles splitting their series, and they're going to be like neck and neck, but I feel like the Cowboys are going to finish like one win ahead because of a loss to the Commanders that the Cowboys won't have. And that is it for the my most polarizing player. It's got to be Chase Young.
Love that.
Yeah, he's one of the pieces that he's not another used car that I'm trying to sell for as much as I can at the trade.
That's actually my most polarizing player. Also, is Chase Young, because after his rookie season, they thought he was going to be the next guy, the next Myles Garrett, and he's been hurt so much. Again, not his fault, but
he's been Jadeveon Clowney.
Well, no, Jadeveon Clowney actually had some all-pro seasons, and I'm like Chase Young's had the one rookie. Chase Young's been RG3. Chase Young's been RG3 up to this point. And he's another one of those if players, because if you look at this defensive line along with Montez Sweat, Jerome Payne, and Jonathan Allen, they could have theoretically one of the best defensive lines in football. But he is so polarized because when he's on the field, he's so good, but he gets hurt so much, which affects his play. I saw their schedule. I agreed. 8-9 just seems realistic, because I'm actually a lot higher on Sam Howell also. I mentioned this last week. Sam Howell was my second-rated quarterback in that draft class. I thought they stole him in the 5th round. I saw him how accurate he is with the ball. You love his feel for the game and the way he's able to adapt to his surroundings. I saw in North Carolina, he would be down by 18 points to Wake Forest in the 4th quarter and then take them on 3 touchdown winning drives. And that kind of DNA can translate into the NFL if you have the skills to translate as well. And he happens to be able to throw to someone like Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson and Logan Thomas. That doesn't hurt. How his offensive line will look, though, because that's been kind of inconsistent and unhealthy, has really hurt Washington. And with Sam Howell, who's going to be a rookie quarterback, will affect him. You can also argue that Washington had the 2 biggest acquisitions of the offseason in Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator, and losing their owner just a couple of days ago. The new ownership deal. Maybe that has some kind of effect on it. You don't even know, because like Dan Snyder, I was so grateful for Dan Snyder, because he made he made the NFL look better by comparison. Everyone hated him. Do you know how bad of an owner you have to be for the other owners to nearly unanimously want to vote you out?
Yeah. Well, especially with how much dirty laundry he had, too, for them to be, I don't care. I don't like you that much.
He got more dirty laundry than a college freshman. It was insane. But I think 8-9 is actually super realistic. I can see them pushing for the playoffs. I don't see them as a bad team. Blake, you mentioned like the Falcons being one of those young, kind of exciting upstart teams. Washington's quietly become that. I see them along that same kind of line. I just think they're a little bit better. How their offensive and defensive line look, how those 2 units play, will dictate how the season goes, because they have talent in the secondary. They have talent in the receiving core. I'm actually a big believer in Sam Howell, especially playing under Eric Bieniemy. Like, they'll have what they need, but the offensive and defensive lines are really going to dictate how well they do, because of how inconsistent and the health has affected them the last couple of years. 8-9 is the prediction, and the game I'm looking at is actually the December 17th game against the Rams, because that's another team I think will, as long as Matt Stafford is healthy, can push for a playoff spot, and that will really dictate, because I think Washington, looking at the schedule, they seem to me like a team who's going to win one, lose one all season long. They start with Arizona, then they go to Denver, then they play Buffalo, then they play Philly, then they play Chicago, then Atlanta. So they could easily be 500 after the first 6 games, and it looks like that the rest of the season. They kind of remind me a little bit of your Patriots, just because like they have such upstart players, but such deficiencies elsewhere that you don't know if one's going to cancel each other out. They seem like a 500 team that could push for that 7th, maybe 6th playoff spot. We'll see. And, I have to think like
their weapons all day long.
They have
all day long.
Their weapons are definitely the best aspect. My biggest hot take, I guess, would be that, I'm going to say they make the playoffs, but that they'll lose in the first round and Ron Rivera gets fired.
I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. Ron Rivera may get fired and Bieniemy may get moved up depending on the season they have. I don't know. Okay, so you want to do the Eagles then?
I'll jump to him. I don't mind. I talked to my buddy Joe Castro, who actually covers the Eagles, like pretty in depth. He and I always trade barbs. It's all in good fun because, like, ultimately, I tell him this, that even though Eagles and Cowboys fans don't like each other, the game has to end at some point. And I asked him in this, and you guys are from the East, so you can probably answer this even better. Like, I don't understand why the cities of Boston, New York, Philly, and DC hate each other so much, like all around. I don't know if it's historic. It's like also in movies and music.
It's in my blood.
Yeah,
I can't control it. It's not so, like I. He's one of my only Bills fan friends. Like I don't have many of those grown on trees.
And outside of the Cowboys, really, those cities don't really pay much mind to Dallas or the state of Texas pretty much at all. It's really just the Cowboys. You don't care about the Rangers. You don't care about the Spurs. You don't care about, I don't know, Beyonce. Like it's like it's the Cowboys is the one defect to y'all from the state of Texas, and like outside of that, you don't care. It's like, oh, you're a Nationals fan. Oh, you're a Mavericks fan. Oh, that's cool. I don't care as long as you're a Cowboys fan. That's the one defect. I look at the Eagles, and they lost some more pieces we don't talk about. They lost Isaac Seumalo, their starting guard. They replaced him with second-year player Cam Jurgens. What does he look like? Is Jordan Mailata going to be able to stay healthy? Can Jalen Hurts capitalize off his really good season last year? But really, his really good season was like kind of like overshadowed by the fact that the NFC was kind of bad. The NFC was had 3 or 4 really good teams. I just want to point out that they never actually beat Dak Prescott. They beat the Cowboys and Cooper Rush quarterback. Just putting that out there again.
They played a very soft.
And they did, but I also won't take away from the fact that they had a really talented team. Okay, I ain't blind. I'm very much aware. I think they have one of the best, maybe one of the 5 best edge rushers in Hassan Reddick. We just don't talk about it. Like they have a really good defensive line with Josh Sweat. So what?
Temple guy. I saw him play in college.
Temple guy, yeah. And then they reclaimed Darius Slay and James Bradbury, keep the secondary in touch. They did lose Chauncey Gardner-Johnson after his best season. We'll see what Reed Blankenship and Terrell Edmonds look like. It's sort of like a fix-it type secondary. I'm interested to see how the linebackers do and that interior defensive line when you add a Jalen Carter and you bring back, obviously, you bring back Jalen Carter and you bring back Jordan Davis and you add a Jalen Carter. Sorry, they're both from Georgia.
There you go.
I knew I'd get that. And they lost other linebackers. They lost Kaiser White. They lost T.J. Edwards. What is Nakobe Dean and Nick Morrow going to look like? We don't know. I think, my hot take, and I don't think it's very much a hot take, is that they're not going to win the NFC East because no one's won back-to-back NFC East in going on 20 years. But I also think they're going to make the playoffs. They're too good not to make the playoffs, especially in a bad NFC. The reality is, like, the Cowboys and Eagles really are like neck and neck, and I've been saying this for years. And until I'm proven wrong, the Eagles and Cowboys will continue to split. The Cowboys will win at home. The Eagles will win in Philly. That's just what happens. Okay, so people will say, "Oh, that's the game of the year. That's the game." No, like we know what's gonna happen. The Eagles will probably win in Philly. The Cowboys will probably win in Dallas. If I'm looking at Philly, I want to see how they do against San Francisco because that's the other team in the NFC, along with Dallas, that's really challenging them for NFC supremacy at least this year. Because right now the NFC is in a vacuum of like mediocrity, except for like 3 to 5 teams, and that's about it. And the Eagles and San Francisco are right smack dab in the middle. Oh, polarizing players, Jalen Hurts, because I think he had a good season, but I don't think he should be a top 5 quarterback just yet because he's had one really good season. Do it again, and then we'll talk.
What's your record?
11-6.
All right, Bahookie, rip it up.
Yep, 11-6 was the same record I had. My game of the year is I gave my game of the years earlier. My 2 games of the year were Chiefs Bengals and Cowboys Eagles. Philly and Dallas December 10th. Sunday Night Football. It doesn't get much bigger than that. And I
in December too. In December,
it's real December football. That's real football, And you're gonna have some injuries at that time of year. It's unfortunate. It's part of the game, but it doesn't matter. Those are the kind of games that you get that cortisone injection and you strap up your chin strap and you get the hell out there. And because they're gonna be in the kitchen, man. It's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to it. Most polarizing player, I have Rashad Penny coming off of the injury. I just really like Rashad Penny's game, and I know it usually doesn't happen for running backs. That Eagles offensive line is really something fierce. They're really one of the best units in the NFL, in my opinion. And then my hot take is that we see this matchup a third time in the playoffs, where the Eagles will lose to the Cowboys,
Ooh. Ooh.
which basically ties into my hot take with the Cowboys.
I became a little bit of a Bills fan there.
Yeah, that's how you guys are going to get back to the NFC Championship, is by way of the Philadelphia Eagles in Dallas.
Ooh-wee.
That's it.
Ooh-wee.
You finished the Eagles and started the Cowboys for us, man.
For sure, and then we'll get out of here. So with the Eagles, I have them at 10-7. Honestly, they have a first place schedule this year. They didn't have one last year. They, like you said, they lost pieces. They're still going to be a really, really good team, but I think their offensive touchdown rate last year was a bit high. So I expect that to come down, and losing a couple of pieces on defense, that's going to hurt like them somewhere. And also, like, looking at their schedule is just gross, really. When you get down the stretch after their bye week, it's Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas, Seattle. That's weeks 11 through 15 right there. That's a really tough stretch of brutal games. You play 3 of them at home and then 2 of them away. That's like, it's tough for me to kind of pick one of those games. I guess I'll say the Kansas City game, the rematch of the Super Bowl. It's kind of easy. My most polarizing player on this team is going to be Devonta Smith. I actually have him finishing ahead of AJ Brown this year in my rankings. Not by much. I'm pretty sure they're 11-12 for me right now. Yeah, they're 11-12. There's a 3-point separation between the two of them. I think that Devonta Smith kind of takes the ceiling off of AJ Brown's year and adds it to his own year to like put himself on the same level of production as them. And he is going to be just elite this year. It's going to be really fun to watch Devonta Smith. My one hot take, I believe that if the Eagles don't win the division, which I don't think they will, they're going to get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. So, against whoever wins whatever division they play. I mean, they'll be the first wild card, but I just don't see them being the juggernaut that they are last year. So that's kind of how I feel about the Eagles. Good team. I just don't think they have another special run in them this year with the way that their rookies are kind of set up. Maybe like in the next couple of years, they're set up for success. This year's schedule, the kind of players they're relying on defense, I think they're having a couple of issues. They lost both coordinators too, something we didn't even touch on. So that doesn't help. So the Cowboys, I think, are going to win the NFC East. They're going to be 12-6. They have a little bit softer of a schedule. They start out with the Giants, Jets, Arizona, New England. They very well could be 4-0 by the end of that stretch there. Start off strong. Then they have a stretch against Carolina, Washington, Seattle, another like kind of middle of the season good stretch. I just think that they're primed to have the type of year that the kind of Eagles did last year. So they brought in Brandon Cooks. They paid Travion Diggs. I think that my most polarizing player right now is going to be Zach Martin. If they don't have Zach Martin, they lose a massive, massive piece in their offensive line. And something that we've always known about the Cowboys is they're fueled by a great offensive line. So they need the interior of their offensive line to stick up for themselves. And if Zach Martin reports, he's one of the best in the game. So it's really hard to deny that. My hot take is that Dak Prescott kind of comes back to form. Last year he threw 15 interceptions. I was making money each week off betting his interception prop. So I don't think that happens again. I think that number kind of falls back to 5 to 7, around that area. I think his touchdown rate goes up with Brandon Cooks added to the offense. More passing with Tony Pollard. No Zeke, so you don't have to lean on that running game. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at for the Cowboys. Blake, you want to go?
Yeah. Most of this stuff I've already kind of put out there and said. Game of the year is the same one I had last time, December 10th, Sunday Night Football. Record 12-5, not 12-6. My most polarizing player, Michael Gallup, if he can. Hot take. The Cowboys make it back to the NFC Championship game for the first time since '95. If my history is right, maybe they made it once since then. And then I was thinking about how this and in that game I have Dallas and San Francisco, all-time classic matchup. I don't know how many times we've seen it. I don't know how many more times we'll see it, but and I'm thinking, how is this game going to end? Because I do have San Francisco going to the Super Bowl, and I think it goes in classic Cowboys fashion. I think Dak Prescott fall over with a chance to win, with like a chance to like go up and put the game away. And then the San Francisco 49ers end up getting like off of that turnover, like a last second field goal and win it like 30-27.
Jane's red.
I'm just naturally tan, but
it's more of a pink tan.
Wow, I ain't gonna lie. Like, a lot of this stuff actually kind of makes me happy to hear, believe it or not. There are a couple things with my team that I do have concern about. I have concern about the play calling because Kellen Moore now is in LA. Now, I believe his ceiling was reached here in Dallas. You can have a good quarterback and a good offensive coordinator, and they can reach a certain ceiling together and realize that, like, this is as good as we're going to get together. We need to go try something else somewhere. It happens. It's fine.
Yeah.
But now Mike McCarthy's going back to calling plays. And then Brian Schottenheimer is essentially the offensive coordinator in name only. He's just gonna like implement the offense, whereas Mike McCarthy's the one calling the plays like he did with Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. So we'll see how that looks. The Cowboys have 3 holes right now, which are still a question mark. The inside linebacker spot next to Leighton Vander Esch, left guard, not just right guard, but left guard, and then kicker. They brought in a guy from the USFL. I can't remember his name, but he played the USFL. And he's going to compete with Tristan Vizcaino. And that's just the Cowboys, unfortunately, to me, like, they show signs and they don't really learn lessons. You know, whenever you preach the opposite line as a focal point, good things happen. Last year, they drafted Tyler Smith in the first round. He became the highest-rated rookie tackle last year. This past draft, they don't draft him offensive line until the 5th round, even though they have serious needs in depth and on left guard. Well, again, we'll see what that looks like. I look at their schedule, and the problem is the Cowboys, pretty much every game is going to be must-watch TV, just because people watch them. Either you love them or you want to watch them lose. That's just how it is. The Cowboys have 6 primetime games. They only have 1 noon game scheduled right now. That's at Carolina. Okay, but here's the thing: if Bryce Young goes out and becomes Rookie of the Year, that's going to be flexed. Or sorry, right now, actually, the Rams and the Panthers are both noon games. But if the Rams go back to being the Rams, and Bryce Young plays like Rookie of the Year, Bryce Young, a lot of people think he can be, that's going to get flexed. The Cowboys are usually must-see TV. If I'm looking at a game that I really want to watch, if I'm like an outsider looking in, it ain't San Francisco or Philly, because like that's just like we're probably gonna see in the playoffs. I'm actually interested to see how they look going back to LA against the Chargers, because last year you could argue that the Chargers got hosed on a no-call pass interference interception in the end zone. And I talked to a couple buddies of mine who actually work for a Blue Wire podcast covering the Chargers. I talked to them about that play. Is that even though that wouldn't have guaranteed them the win, that's still the game they're going to go back to. That's going to be a revenge game for them in some aspects. But the problem is that people always seem to play their best when they play the Cowboys. A bad team can play their best when they play the Cowboys, just because of like generational hatred. That's kind of like honestly, it's kind of irrational on the outside looking in, but but whatever.
Moore is going to have that team ready to go too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. But also, I'd also say that Dan Quinn's going to have his defense ready against Kellen Moore's offense. At 12-5 is the prediction. I think they will split with Philadelphia. I don't know where the other 4 losses come from. I think between, I think I'm looking at their losses. I think Buffalo could be a loss. I think San Fran could be a loss, especially because they have to go to Candlestick. The Chargers could very well be a loss. And the 5th loss in this thing is the Cowboys always lose one game they shouldn't to a team they're definitely better than. It could be the Patriots. It definitely could be the Patriots.
We played you well last time we played. Like,
yes,
that was a great game.
It could be the Seahawks. The Seahawks could be a team that they're better than that they could lose. They always lose to one game they shouldn't lose. It happens every year. It's going to happen. My hot take for the Cowboys is this: that if they don't make it past the second round of the playoffs again, Mike McCarthy's out, and Dan Quinn gets elevated. But that's also not necessarily so much of a hot take because I do know someone who works within the star of the building, and that is kind of a potential field that people are looking at if things go that way.
I think the second half's more hot than the first half. I think McCarthy goes like almost like regardless. Like he doesn't have any more scapegoats if it doesn't go well this year.
If he makes the Super Bowl, they ain't letting him go.
Oh no, he'll die there. That's fine. Like that will happen.
Most polarizing player. Dak Prescott is too easy of an answer, so I'm actually gonna give y'all another polarizing player, a player that a lot of people kind of overlook, is Trayvon Diggs. Trayvon Diggs, no one had ever heard of the cornerback stat yards allowed in coverage until Pro Football Focus did an expose on Trayvon Diggs because he led the league in interceptions. No one ever talked about that. Had you ever heard of yards allowed in coverage before Trayvon Diggs as popular as it was after that?
It's like the negative
Yeah, every year there's some random new acronym stat that needs to be, this is the real reason why players aren't good or good. It's like,
and it's always attached to a Cowboys player because the Cowboys because Cowboys, whether you like it or not, and this is the truth, the Cowboys sell headlines, and it's kind of annoying as a Cowboys fan and someone who covers the Cowboys to like that like they're being used really just to move. They're used to move content. Because ultimately, the Cowboys actually had the most boring offseason this past summer. But even still, people still wouldn't stop talking about it.
It was boring, but they added things they needed. I think Brandon Cooks is a real need for
this. And Stephon Gilmore. Stephon Gilmore, too.
Absolutely. Those are two massive things. Both of those players have won Super Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, both of those could be leaders and locker room guys for them. So, I like a lot of the things that Dallas does. That makes me just want to throw up in my mouth. So let's do an ad read, and then we can get out of here.
StadiumRant proudly presents Sportsmanlike Misconduct, hosted weekly on Wednesdays by Karson McKinley. He is always coming up with innovative ways to bring content to this community. After this episode, be sure to go give him a sub at his channel and check out his recent NFL videos.
Word. And make sure you give us a sub, StadiumRant on YouTube, and make sure you just check out our content. It's down there on the ticker. Guys, if you want to give a little shout out before we go for it.
Appreciate you guys.
Word.
Football's almost back.
Football's almost back.
I said what I needed to say.
All right, we'll end it on that. We're under an hour and a half. We did pretty well.